Hello. In this video we're going to talk about Undersea Explorer shorelines, how they're used, why they're needed. We'll show you a few tricks for using them, and we'll talk about a couple other features briefly. So here you can see on the screen we've got an aerial of a lake. We'll zoom in a little bit so you can get a little better look at it. We'll show the points that were stored while we were on our boat. And the purpose for shorelines is that if we turn on the contours that were generated from these points, you can see on the outside of our lake there's contours being drawn. Well, that's just because there's no way to determine where the actual edge of the lake or the zero depth is. And it's not possible really to get your boat in there to get those. So the way we get those is by loading an aerial map within Undersea Explorer, which is another feature. We won't go into that right now, but we've loaded an aerial here. So we can see, if we zoom in here, we can see, I'll turn off the points, we can see that these contours go way outside of the actual edge of the lake. So if I turn the contours down or off, you can see that there's just land over there. There's not actually contours over there. So what we do to fix that is we're going to use the shoreline tool, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can get a lot better look at this. So what we do is we use the shoreline tool and we start clicking along the shoreline. And we would do that all the way around the lake. Now I'm going to take a shortcut here and at the same time show you another feature. I'm going to actually load all of those points. Since I already stored them at one time, I exported them with a feature of Undersea Explorer, and I'm just going to import them back in. They'll just take a second. Okay, close our menu. Now you can see the shoreline has been stored. Zoom out a little bit. We'll turn our contours back on and regenerate them. So I just pressed the Control-G key. I'll zoom out a little bit, turn off my point so you can see it when it gets drawn here in just a second. And there you go. So what the shoreline does is it sets a zero depth point wherever you store the shoreline points. And so in this case, we just went around the entire edge of the lake. And it created a zero contour for us. Okay. Now, sometimes you may want to map just a section of a lake or a section of a river, and for those cases the shoreline tool, you need to do a little trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that shoreline. I'll regenerate it so you can see that the shoreline is gone. Okay, so what we want to do here for this demonstration is we want to just map a section, because a lot of times, if you're especially on a river or a long body of water, you may want to do this in a section, or maybe you're not interested in the rest of the water body and you want to just get a section. So I'm going to turn these contours off so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to take just a small section, and I'm going to start storing a shoreline. click on the shoreline tool, and I'm not going to be really accurate with this, just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so I've started to store a line along the shoreline. Now what I'm going to do is out here in the middle, I don't want to store a zero elevation because it's not zero. I'm going to hold the control key down, and I'm just going to start putting some points across the lake. Now what the control key does is it says cut off the map here at these points. You can see where they're blue, and it just says cut them off there, or crop the map there. Now that I get back to the shoreline, I'm going to let up on the control key, and I'm going to continue going in a clockwise fashion around this area. And I'm not being very meticulous. Of course, you would want to be probably more meticulous with yours, but just for demonstration purposes, this will work. So now I'm going to hold the control key again on the other end of this section that I want to map. I'm just going to store a few more cropping points. Keep the control key down. And if you make a mistake, you can use the backspace key. I'll show you that here. I hit the backspace key a few times. Okay. Now if I zoom out, turn my contours back on, I'll hit the Control G, and that's going to regenerate the contours, but it's only going to show this section. And you'll notice that along the shore, it'll slope up to 0 along the shore. We'll zoom in here so you can get a look at that. Yeah, you can see here, it comes up to 0, slopes down into the lake. Same thing on the other side. Okay, but you'll notice here across the center, where I stored the crop points with the control key down, it doesn't store 0, it just cuts it off there. So you can see you got a nice section of the lake. Okay, that's shorelines. Now we can also store islands, and here's a case where I actually have an island that's already been stored. And using the island tool, it's the same thing as the shoreline, only it's on the inside of the water body. And what that does is it stores 0 points around an island. And you can see here it slopes up nicely to 0 around where I've stored those points around this island. Turn off the contours so you can actually see it on the map. There's the island, and there is the island that I'd stored earlier. Turn off the points, get a little better look at it. And turn on and off our shoreline so you can see that showing up. And so that's pretty much it with shorelines. You've seen that we can store shoreline by using an aerial as a reference, and you've also seen with the professional edition it's possible to save our shorelines out to a file and import shorelines from a file. We can import shorelines from shape files and text files and things like that. We can also export to shape files and some other formats as well. And that's about it for this demonstration. Thank you.